right. Assalamu alaikum, Shahista Ibrahim. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I'm very, very, very well this morning. How are you doing, Kiran? Lovely to be
Alhamdulillah.
chatting.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Excellent. Everything is fine from my side. So, for my viewers and for my ladies in the group, I have to tell that, I have here with me Shahista Ibrahim, who need a little or short intro that, she is an NLP coach and holistic integrated practitioner, motivational speaker, and inspirational leader. And today we're going to discuss about, how can we do good parenting. Let us begin, Shahista, first with this question that suppose these days children they are like millennial and a lot more parents they are suffering and having a lot more trouble to deal with their children, and in that manner, in that regard, because things just have been changed. It's not like 20 years ago normally used to be happen with the children, and children a lot more into technology devices and stuff, and they get a lot more information through that as well. So what do you think from your side, from your perspective, that should be a good parenting? If we we shall begin with this, and that definitely we shall further do more discussion in that regard.
Okay, so perfect. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Firstly, I think it's a beautiful topic. Parenting is such an important part of our lives. It's such an integral part. We obviously have to do, in order to do good parenting, you have to have the tools. And when you do good parenting, you bring up a good society, a better community, a better individual who will make a difference. So it's sort of taking it forward. So when it comes to good parenting, yes, we know parents struggle. I mean, if we think of what we as kids used to be able to handle. I mean, our parents just gave us big eyes, and immediately you knew you had to behave well. And obviously, today's kids tend to question a lot. They want to know why. They're not shy to say, "Why are you looking at me that way?" They'll embarrass you in front of people. They're much more outspoken. So when it comes to good parenting, we're hoping to give a lot of our viewers and listeners and people good tips so they can handle the kids a lot better. So good parenting is about bringing up your child with acts of good character. And good character and morals, we're talking about kindness, compassion. We're talking about how to help other people, how to be more helpful. So when and obviously to know what the right things in life are, to follow that, to have a lot of self-esteem and confidence, so they can actually say no to the peer pressures, to everything that is happening around them today. And like you rightly said, so much of information is available to them today at the touch of a button, on the screen. I mean, everything's available. So we have to be extra careful. So good parenting is also about, what constitutes good parenting for me is, when you talk to your child and they actually listen, and they listen because you've been somebody who's actually taken them to be sort of an adult or somebody important, because we have the notion, and I mean, I am slightly guilty of that as well. I'm a little bit old school, that if I tell my kids something, they need to listen. And now, as they get older, they kind of say, well, because my kids are now adults, they'd say, but mom, you need respect, you've got to respect us. And so your kids eventually turn out to be your best teachers because they teach you how to do that. So for me, one of the biggest things are definitely how to respect your kids, how to treat them as adults, how to be there for them. So there's a lot of aspects that takes good parenting, but actual parenting means bringing up emotionally strong individuals who can stand up for themselves and help to make their own decisions. Because another thing, Kiran, that we tend to do is we think we need to make decisions for our kids. I don't think you should go there. I don't think you should do that. Career wise, that may not work for you. I'd like for you to be a doctor. I mean, as parents, we always think we always know what's better for our kids. But when it comes to good parenting, when they're young, you give them all the tools they need. And then when they're older, it's about respecting their choices and believing that you've done a good enough job for them to do their own thing.
All right. So, what do you think, Shahista, that the best way to be a good parent, and not the right ways that most of the time we follow and we think no, we just become good parents, but those things are not supposed to be taken as a good parent, or the best ways to supposed to be taken. So, how can you discriminate and identify that okay, now these are the best ways, and the others are not the best ways, because we should give them some space as well to as being parents to children. So how can you identify them?
Balance the whole thing for sure.
Yes.
So one, intention, right? I mean, we get married, and everybody says, I have a child, and our intention is the child's going to bring us together. It's going to bring a bond. It's going to make us a family. It's going to complete our lives. So that's wonderful that we think that that's going to happen. But I think we need to first start having more of better intentions. Like, I want to bring this child up to be in service of humanity, and we don't think of that. When we have children, we're so excited about just like the name and the baby and getting everybody to visit, and there's baby showers these days, and there's so much of hype around what the child is expected to do for you as parents, that we as parents need to also think about what I want for my child. Because when you have a vision, I want this child to grow up in a certain way. I want this child to be have more Allah consciousness, Almighty consciousness, God fearing. I want this child to be somebody who can show compassion. When we have intention, so the first thing I would say with anything in life is your intention. Okay, that helps for you to have a structure, because you know where you want to go. Goals and intention makes it easier for us to get to where we need to be. That's the one thing. The second part is we also need to be good role models. Back in the day, my father could tell me, do as I say, don't do as I do, right? And it was okay. He got away with that because I would listen. He's my father, out of respect. Today, the kids, they really want to see the behavior in you that you want to see in them. You need to be a role model. So if you're telling your child, you need to be understanding, you need to be compassionate and kind, but you shout at the waiter, you shout at the petrol attendant, you're always losing your cool, and then you expect them to turn out this completely different person, it does not work, right? So we have to be good role models. They have to see. So another part is that they have to have, learn through action, right? Through whatever we do. So whatever we do, they look and they learn. So we always say that kids learn what they see, because at home, if the father or the mother is very temperamental, if the father's always screaming, fighting, and shouting, they start to see this as normal because it's something they deal with every day. When that happens, they tend to either hate it so much that they become the opposite. So a lot of time, you'll find a child will be so docile, so quiet, so reserved, and then when you dig a little bit deeper, you find that the father is violent, the father is abusive, and so the child decided in his mind, I'm never going to be anything like my father. But if the father is a successful man, this child also then decides, I'm not going to be like him. So he's always struggling through life because he will, identify success with my father, and I don't want to be anything like him. But 99%, unfortunately, history repeats itself. So a person that comes from an abusive home becomes abusive as well. So we have to remember that children are looking, they're watching us. Our actions are extremely important. Everything we do, they see. And another thing we need to do a lot to do good parenting is to build self-esteem. So that is through affection. They say that if a child receives hugs, like a good solid 1.5 minutes of a hug, it can be broken down into little hugs and attention, affection the whole day, or you can really just give them a really good hug and hold them for a really long time so they feel that warmth from your heart to theirs. That child, just with the affection that they shown, already allows them to feel confident within themselves. So when parents are affectionate with each other, it forms a very close bond, because children, they build themselves up and they learn when you have this lovely triangle. So you have the kids on the top, you have mom, and you have dad. So when you have this triangle, this constitutes of balance in a child's life. There's a lot of stability in a child's life. And when these kids feel protected by this balance and stability, they grow up having better emotional values. They grow up being a bit stronger. They grow up more confident. So it is the foundation for having good children. So there's a lot of good, there's a lot of elements when it comes to good parenting.
Amazing insight. Okay, if I ask you another question, like suppose, how can we develop, EQ of a child as a parent, like emotional quotient, if you can, elaborate a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you mentioned that EQ is emotional quotient. And a lot of people over time, they've always been about IQ, how intelligent a child is. And sometimes, we always say the child is so intelligent, or my child's going to be a doctor. We feel good because we place a lot of emphasis on how smart the children are. Okay. But now over time, we've realized that it's just as important to build the EQ, that is the emotional quotient of the child. And when you build the emotional quotient, what we actually saying that that child's a very stable child. They're able to then handle situations better. They will be able to be more assertive in certain aspects of their life. They will able to make certain boundaries and be able to do that in play quite easily. So building a child up means that you have to show them kindness, empathy, compassion. Again, they learn that from us, but you've also got to teach them when it's, when they're right and they're wrong. I had somebody actually tell my husband, when my son was he was doing hifz, and his ustad was speaking, and he said, we as parents we are the generation now that we are scared of our parents, but we're also scared of our children. We are that generation that are so afraid. So we find it sometimes intimidating as parents to tell the children where they go wrong. So we always, some people will scream at the children and say, no, how can you do that? That's just wrong. We don't teach with violence. We don't teach children better lessons in life by screaming at them, by shaming them. How could you? I'm so embarrassed of you. You're awful. You're telling that to a small child. You're embarrassing them. You're using very bad language. So building emotional quotient is about teaching them the right and wrong, truthfulness and not being truthful. Kids lie, and and a lot of them will say, I did my homework, but they didn't. Or, I passed my test, or the teacher didn't give to sign for the parents to sign because maybe he didn't do well in the test. So they will give you those little lies. But as a parent, you have to remember that we have to teach them through love and kindness. So you've got to get your child close to them. This is extremely important for parents to remember. When talking to children, if you are tall and your child's here, you have to go on your knees, you have to sit in a chair or either pick them up, your eye contact. Because when you're talking to eye contact, you have more of an audience with them. They listen to you better instead of you looking down on them. And so you got to tell them that I know you not telling me the truth because you're scared. But I promise you that if you're honest enough with me, not today, for the rest of my life, I'll respect you better. So now what we're teaching children, the emotional quotient, the EQ of it, is that lying doesn't pay. But if you talk the truth, you get respect. So as parents, we set the tone. As parents, we can do this for our kids. And when the child says, okay, the teacher did give me the test, you sign it, hug the child. So we need to acknowledge. That's another thing that people don't do. As parents, we always looking at the negative. Why didn't you do this? You could have done better. You got 80%, you should have got 90. Now you came out second, you should have got first. Why didn't you do well? Hurry up, go to madrasa, go to school, get ready for your swimming. There's so much of happening, but we forget to say, I'm proud of you. You did excellent. So remember to show the affection and to acknowledge them when they're doing the right thing. Because when they do the right thing, that's when you're building the EQ. And all you're doing is teaching them in small increments that for the rest of their life, doing the right thing does pay off. So then the child lying because I get respect when I tell the truth. They're going to learn that value for the rest of their life. I You're going to teach your child that every time I show compassion, my mom acknowledges it. She hugs me and she says, I'm so glad you gave that charity to that person. Or you took out your clothes and you said, Mom, this trouser's gone small for me. I'd like to give it away. So you teach your children to be kind, compassionate, empathetic to humanity by little acts of kindness and acknowledgement. And when you do that, you build the self esteem. So affection builds self esteem. Um, Showing them kindness and acknowledging them builds self-esteem. And self-esteem and self-worth is the basis of everything that we do in life. If you feel good about yourself, you're going to show it forward. You're going to be happy. You're going to make people happy. People are going to want to be in your environment. Even the boss at work is lovely to have this co-worker, this employee, because he's always in a good mood. Whatever he does, he puts heart and soul in it. So self-worth, self-confidence, self-respect goes a very long way. And that's how these little ways that we can actually build this in our children's lives.
All right. Thank you for responding to this question. So, Shahista, suppose there's another question in my mind that how do we help our children? Because if you just see, in surrounding, this society is brutal, and a lot of children that have been through sort of trauma. uh, First, if I just talk about the relationship, like suppose their parents been divorced, or there are some other problem like separation or losing a sibling. And other than that, of course, like trauma is just not like just connected with the family relationship or other problem, but it's a lot if you just go into deeper and regarding for society. So how can we help our children? We'll just discuss a lot more about this, but I just don't want to go there. But for now, if just give some elaboration in sort of helping our children who are suffered with sort of trauma, any sort of problem, so then how can we deal with our children who are traumatic?
Absolutely. So trauma is part of life, right? We use the word trauma, and trauma sounds like a very big thing that may happen, but it may be the smallest thing that can happen in a child's life that gives them trauma. The child may have trauma because that particular teacher looked at his handwriting example and said, "This is disgusting," and threw the book at the child, which teachers tend to do these days. So, that child felt embarrassed in class. They felt really awful. They felt disappointed. They felt humiliated. They felt rejected. So that may small thing that we think is small, that just the teacher says, "Go and redo this work. This is terrible," could be traumatic for the child, right? So trauma could be those little things, and of course, the big things like parents separating, divorce, losing a sibling, losing a loved one, a grandparent, could be a lot of things, right? So when a child goes through trauma, what we must understand is the behavior starts to change. When people so we say a traumatic experience will normally bring a lot of sadness, a lot of hurt, a lot of grief to the person, right? And grief itself has different stages. So we start to look firstly at the behavior pattern. So if people have kids that are going to school and every day they keep telling them, their mom, "My stomach is sore," because that's normal with kids, right? "My stomach's sore."
Yeah.
When a child, what you need to remember is all worry and anxiety sits in the stomach. Okay, so that child is avoiding going to school by making excuses for a reason. Now, as parents, if we do not deal with the trauma, whatever trauma it is, and we allow it to continue. So you keep saying, okay, they lost a loved one, or the parents are divorced, and you say, "It's going to be okay. You'll get to see dad once in a while. It's not a problem. He still loves you." But every day you see him pining and he's missing his dad, and you allow that to continue, then that is signs that the child's going to start going to depression. And what happens with trauma, they get feelings of sadness and hurt. They start losing interest in school. It's very easy. Kids are resilient. So when you help them, you see it immediately. They're like up and about so quickly. But when they go down, you also see just so quickly. All of a sudden the teacher will call, "This child is not doing well. I see they're not concentrating. Is something happening at home?" Right? So you start noticing behavior patterns. "No, mom, I don't want to play outside. I don't want to do that." Maybe sitting on the PlayStation for hours at a time, or just wanting to sleep and be alone. So when you see that, parents must intervene, because the longer we leave that to happen, the further it becomes, the worse it becomes, and then dealing with it. So start to notice patterns: not eating well, not sleeping well, making excuses of not wanting to play, making excuses of not wanting to go to school. "My stomach is sore" is a big one, because that really is something. Then you've got to, again, take the child, put the child on your lap and say, "Tell mommy what's going on in your life. Like, I want to know." And most kids will say, "No, nothing," because they think we don't understand. And as parents, we show them. When they tell us this, we normally hard on them. We give it to them. We're so angry at them. So this is the time you say, I promise I'm not going to say anything. I just want to be here for you. So the one thing that children appreciate the most is a parent that stays, that is there, that shows up and is present. So you know when a child says no and they hit the mother, like or the father, go away, I don't talk to you. And the parent still stays. And the child will say, go away, and obviously crying and not meaning it, but angry. And I don't talk to you, leave me alone. And you say, I'm not going anywhere, I'm here for you. That breaks down the barriers, and that's when your child learns to trust you. So parents, when they told by their children, especially smaller kids, go away, don't. Stay there and keep showing, telling them, I'm here for you, show up, I'm present. And then slowly get your child to explain what's happening. If they're being bullied, if they've gone through trauma, explain to them how you can help, but ask them, what would you like me to do? Because it's very easy for me to go and shout the teacher and to shout the boy and maybe pick up the phone and phone the bully's parents, but you could be making 10 times worse. So ask your child, what do you want? And the most important thing is, Kiran, is get help for your child. Sometimes parents don't have the tools on how to help children. I mean, you go to a psychologist, you can go to a coach. I just feel professional help helps a child. I deal with children a lot, and I know that sometimes parents' work ends here, and then you take that a little bit further. But together, we actually help the child become healthier, happier, normal again. So start looking for the signs and stop it. Speak to them before it gets worse. And trauma is part of life, but when you teach them, if a bully comes, sit with a child, example, and say, this is what I want you to do. Or if they cry because they've lost a sibling or a grandpa, grandmother, somebody, say, you know what, today we're going to think of Nani, we're going to think of Nana, we're going to think of grandmother and grandfather, but let's make dua for them. So you teach them how to deal with the situation, but how to make it better as well. So now they know in life, when we miss somebody, it's okay to cry. So allow them to cry. In fact, parents love to say, I need to be strong for my kids, especially if they're going through a separation, a divorce. Moms don't cry in front of kids. Parents don't want to cry. They don't want to show that hurt. But show them, because it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. And once we do that, we teach our child to be human. And then they can connect to us and they can trust us better.
Amazing. So, last question for today's session, I'm going to pose to you that suppose that what is the good sort of strategy that we should think that should we measure our success as a parent by the quality of the relationship? Do you think there are some gaps that we don't measure it up properly, and the quality relationship doesn't build up properly with children and parent together? So what would you say about that? So would like to listen.
So for the gaps, right? So the first thing I think that as parents, what we need to do is spend more time teaching them how to be better human beings. Like even from an Islamic perspective, spend time when you read Quran, call them and say, bring your madrasa work. I'd love to help to teach you. I'm going to the masjid. You're going to come with me, but I promise if you behave, I'm going to give you a 2 rand. Like bribe them if you need to, because you want them to come to learn, but you also want them to behave. So you've got to say, if you do this for me, I'll do that. So we need to learn to negotiate with our kids. And I think that's a huge gap that nobody's doing, because we always do this and do that. If not, this and that's going to happen. So we're not negotiating. And kids love negotiation because it's a win-win situation for everybody, right? So the one thing is about, spending that quality time together. I think we've come to a point in our lives where we feel that materialism is more important than quality time. Like we buy our kids branded stuff, we buy them expensive things. I know people, when your kids are still in matric, they get their own cars. And I mean, they don't even have their license yet, and yet they have their own cars. So we feel and we've confused love for materialism. And by all means, if you've got the money and you'd love to do that for your kids, do that. But don't think that that's enough. You have to learn to spend time with kids, quality time. Sometimes, kids, you'll find kids will come and trouble the mothers on the phone, and that child will be pulling at the dress and saying, Mommy, Mommy, they're like so irritating. And then you've got to just say, hold on. And then you look at the child and say, gee, like, what do you want from mommy? And the child will just say, I came to say hi, right? Something simple like that. But it just shows us that kids want to be seen. They want parents to acknowledge them. And we come at a time when mom and dad are both working now. We come, during a time when mom comes home, she's still got to cook and clean and pack, washing, and whatever needs to be done around the house. And then you've got to sit with homework. So there isn't a quality time that they're spending. It's time together, but everybody's busy doing things in that time. And then mom wants to put kids to sleep because then that's the time she has a few minutes, and dad where they can just chill, and just rest before another day. So we need to make time. And I would, advise my clients, and I'd say, take one child out on a Saturday afternoon, but only one child, and say, this week it's your turn. Either father and daughter, mother and son, whoever, but take your child out and you go and have a milkshake, go and spend a day at the mall, just walking and talking, get in touch with what's happening in your child's life. Because during the week it's so hectic. So when you do have time, that quality time is what they're going to remember. And when you go on holiday, or not even on holiday, at home, do fun things, because kids remember the memories they have is about the fun things that they did and what was so cute, what happened, or what we ate when we did that. That's how they associate love. So I find the biggest gap today is we're not spending real quality time together. And when we are together, everyone's on their cell phones. You go to the supper table, people are on their cell phones. So we've got to make a rule. And if every parent that's listening can make a rule, then kids eventually the first week they'll complain, crazy. But the second week, they'll get into it. So make a rule: no cell phones allowed at the supper table, no cell phone allowed when we're going to dinner, at a restaurant, and let's have absolute quality time. And we love suggestions, and I love to on my I would always have um in my I would always have a list, and my list would always say things to do and Saturday and the weekend, stuff like that. So, alhamdulillah, that happened, then the kids would know this Saturday we're doing this, that. Then they kind of get used to the idea. They mustn't make, friends arrangements or whatever. This is quality time. This is family time. So that's for me the biggest gap that we need to bridge today in order to have real quality lives and families.
Okay, that's wonderful, amazing. And I would say thanks a lot for coming. It was really, really insightful. And I think that my viewers just gonna take away from this beautiful and amazing, insightful session, gonna be much more helpful for them. And just gonna see you soon again.
We need to understand that our kids are an amana, they are trust given to us. And we always, we'll be questioned regarding our trust, regarding the way we bring them up. So let's do the best, because whatever you do today, they're going to learn for the rest of their lives, and they benefit. Our grandchildren will benefit, our grandchildren's children. So whatever effort you're putting in now, it will show up in your life, over and over again. So it's worth going that extra mile, inshallah.
100%, 100%. Gonna see you soon again. Thanks a lot for coming and have a lovely day.